Going through these three articles, there are about 5 things that I learned. The first one is about overview. Whenever you are writing about your finding, you have to start with an overview, introduction, letting people know about the purpose and maybe the problem of the study and what they should expect in the findings. What are you going to present to them? It's like you are promising them, you are providing what they will learn from the information that you are presenting, or what are the sections that you're going to talk about. Giving them idea about what they will be reading is very important. The next one is demographics. You're providing them background information about your data source or your participant is so important to help them to put things in context and also help with the transferability of your findings. So it can be transferred to similar contexts if you provide a very rich information about participant demographics or the rich context is very important. The next one that you have to think about is data analysis process. Why is this one very important? Because analyzing qualitative data sometimes is a subjective experience. It's a private experience that people are not watching you as you are making sense of your data, right? So it's very important to disclose the process so that it increases the credibility of your findings. It's also a way of helping future researchers to learn about the best practices. How were you able to arrive at your themes? Can somebody do the same thing to arrive at your team? So it increases the credibility of the findings. It puts things in context and also it helps future researchers to learn the best practices. The next one is presentation of the findings, stating the outcome of the analysis. Lastly, you summarize, providing a brief description of what you have presented. So these are the 5 areas that you have to think about when you are presenting your qualitative findings. Let's start with the overview. As you know, you are stating what readers should expect. And what are the things that you want to talk about? The first one is when you are writing, especially when you're writing the dissertation or thesis, you want to remind your audience about a specific problem that you address in your study. It can be 1 to 2 sentences. It doesn't have to be a lot because you have already provided that information in maybe your chapter 1. So you don't have to go into detail. You just have to remind your audience that this is a problem that I address in my study. And then you state the purpose of the study. It can be 1 to 2 sentences. This is the purpose of the study. Sometimes people state their research question, but you don't have to do that because you'll be stating your research question when you are presenting your findings. So these are the 2 things that you have to present. And then lastly, you give a brief description about the core components or the core content of the presentation. What are you going to talk about? Or what are the sections that you're going to write about? So providing information that will help people to know what they should expect is very important. So these are the 3 things that you have to think about when you are writing an overview. The next one that you have to think about is the research setting. This one is optional. As you can see, it wasn't part of the 5 areas. It's optional because it's not really required for you to talk about your research setting, especially if you have already provided detailed information about how you collected your data. But this session is also will help readers to get a good picture about what happened during your data collection stage. What happened? Yes, we know that you have provided us detailed description about how you collected your data, but this one is a little bit different because when it comes to qualitative, people want to know your experience of collecting data. What was going through your mind? What did you see? What are the challenges that you face when you are collecting the data? What are the best practices that you want to share? This is a good time for you to describe your experience of collecting qualitative data. And you have to be very careful not to repeat yourself, like you present the same information that you have presented in the methodology section where you describe how you collected your data. But this one is a little bit different because you are narrating what happened when you were collecting the data. What was your data collection experience? What was the situation during the data collection phase? What did you see? What did you observe? What was the environment like? You are making readers have the feel of you collecting the data. You are painting the atmosphere, painting the data collection environment to your audience to imagine how you collected your data from participants. That's a very interesting place to write about. So the next one is, if you collected data from participants, right, then you have to provide participant demographics. What are the features of your data source? What are the characteristics of participant? There are three ways of presenting participant demographics. You can present the demographic information in a collective manner. You can present that in an individualized manner, or you can combine them, right? Both collective and individualized presentation. You are doing the communication, and I think you just have to decide which one will help you to communicate in an effective way concerning who you talk to or where you collect the data from. So the collective way is quite similar to when you're doing a quantitative study and you are presenting participant demographics. So as you can see here, it says 30 participants completed the open-ended survey. In terms of the agenda, most of them were females, and in parentheses, N is equal to 15, 50%. And then you refer readers to the table. You can also see here that lastly, a few of them have completed their doctoral degree. In parentheses, N is equal to 5, and they represent 17% of the participants. So you see how you can present your information in a collective manner. You can create a table that is also a collective because you are not presenting in an individualized way. You don't have to talk about everything on the table, but you just have to talk about interesting parts. So you see how I didn't talk about everything. The readers can refer to the table and get all the information that they need, but you just highlighted the most important things that you want readers to pay attention to. You do the collective presentation if you want to protect participants. If you feel that presenting individual information about participants will adversely affect the confidentiality of participants, it's very important to present that information in a collective way. Another thing is that when you have a lot of participants, it makes sense to present your demographics in a collective way. Having 30 participants, if you present it in individual way, this means that you're going to have a list of 30 descriptions about their demographics, and it's a lot to look through. So when you have a lot of participants, let's say you have 20 or 30 participants, then you have to consider presenting the information in a collective way. But if you have 8, 10, 12 participants, or maybe 15 participants, you can present that information in an individualized way. So these are the things that you have to think about when you are deciding which one to use. Another way is that you have to think about is you can present the demographic in both collective and also individualized way, right? So as you can see here, the participants were 8. So at the beginning, I said 8 participants were interviewed, out of which 5 were females, which is 63%, right? As you can see here, I've also provided the age range of participants. So the first and the second sentence are collective, but when you go to the third one, PT1 was the youngest participant and a Caucasian. It's talking about individual participants. You do that if you want to bring out the uniqueness of one or few of the participants, right? As you can see, the table is very different from the first table, which is like a collective format. This one is individualized because you have all the participants, the PT1 to PT8, and also their individual demographics. This one is very useful because when you are presenting your findings, you may quote participant, and readers may want to know who is participant PT3. Then they can refer to the table and get all the information. So that's why presenting a table like this in an individualized way will be very helpful. So you have options. You can present the demographic in a collective way, if that makes sense to you, and it will make sense to your audience, and it's going to be very helpful considering the pros and the cons. I think you can do that. You can also present your finding in individualized way if you want to bring out the uniqueness of each participant. Then you can write a little bit of description about each of the participants, especially if they are not a lot, right? But another option that you can think about is do the combination. You can present some in a collective manner and another in the individualized manner. I've seen also another option where the narration will be collective, but the table will be individualized. So you have a lot of options here. You just have to choose the one that you feel like you'll be able to communicate background information in an effective way. As you are always doing that, you have to also think about participant identity. Think about this way. If you plan to provide individual information about participants, will that affect the confidentiality of participants? Because if it's going to adversely affect the confidentiality of participant information, you have to then stop presenting that information. You should not present participant information if it will adversely affect the confidentiality of their data or the confidentiality of participant identity. So background information is very important, but always protect participants. These are the options that I have for you. Now that we are done with the way of communicating your demographic information, the next step is to provide step-by-step how you analyze your data. This one is so important. By ensuring transparency and credibility of your findings, you always have to make sure that you are describing how you analyze your data. Present in such a way that if somebody look at your description of how you analyze your data, they can also do the similar things that you did. So these are the things that you have to note. You have to state the type of data analysis that you use, right? The type of qualitative analysis that you use. Did you use thematic analysis? Did you use content analysis? Did you use graded theory analysis? Did you use interpretative phenomenological analysis? Did you use discourse analysis? Did you use narrative analysis? Providing the type of analysis will be helpful for your readers. There should be a name for the analysis that you are doing. And if you don't know, you can look into the existing literature and identify the best name that will represent the type of analysis. Another thing that you have to do is that to increase the credibility of your findings, it's very important for you to look into existing study and see the steps that has been provided by one of the renowned qualitative researchers, and then use it in a way of demonstrating how you analyze your data. It helps to increase the credibility of your findings if you do that. Trying to look into the best practice of analyzing the data and follow that and cite the source. That will be very helpful. You have to choose the type of data analysis. The second one is optional, but you can do that stating the coding strategy that you use. There are many coding strategies. Two of them are description-focused coding, interpretation-focused coding. So the description-focused coding is all about describing your data. You are identifying significant information from the data and then giving a description by using a phrase to describe what you found. And the interpretation-focused coding is all about developing a phrase that demonstrates the interpretation of what you found or the significant information that you have identified. I have a video that explains in detail about description-focused coding and interpretation-focused coding. Besides, we have other coding strategies like value coding, open coding, Azure coding, focus coding. We have many types. You just have to identify the coding strategy that you use, and then you describe that. If you don't have a name, then you have to just provide detailed information about how you develop the code. Did you go to the data with the research question in mind? Did you identify significant information? And then based on that information that you have identified, you develop a label, which is the code representing that information. And then you also have to provide what was the outcome after you have developed codes. How many codes did you develop? What are the examples of the codes? Sometimes you have to provide example for people to get an idea about how you constructed the codes. So how many codes? 20 codes? Addressing which research question? Providing the outcome of the major steps that you took is very, very important. So after the coding, what was the outcome? Then you move on to categorization. You categorize the code to develop themes. After developing the themes, how many themes did you get? How did you transform the code into the themes? Providing a very detailed description about the process is so important, right? So the next one is to present the findings. After you have provided the step-by-step, then you have to present the findings. There are many ways of presenting qualitative findings. The two main ways that I can think of right now are the theme-driven format, and also we have case-driven format. So as the name implies, you are presenting your findings based on the themes that you have. So you have your research question, and then you start with the first theme. You describe what the theme is all about. You provide evidence and you explain and you provide a conclusion. You present the themes and provide all the information that is needed. And then you go to the second theme and do that. So you are presenting the findings based on the theme. And we also have the second one is the case-driven format. Normally use it when you are focusing on multiple case study and you want to show the uniqueness of each of the case. So let's assume that you have 3 participants and then you collected data from them. You analyze each of the participant data separately, and then you want to present each of them because you want to show the uniqueness of each of the participants. So you can say participant 1 and provide all the themes, describe what you found, and you go to participant 2, you present what you found, you go to participant 3. It's similar to also if you are focusing on maybe companies, right? Company A, you present all the information, right? The findings, and go to company B, you present all the information, you go to company C. If you want to compare and contrast cases, then you can present your information in the case format. But the popular way of presenting your findings is the theme-driven format. So you always have to think about your research approach and make sure that the way that you are presenting your findings is consistent with the research approach, similar to what I showed you in the article. If you want to get more information, my book will give you more information and detail about these types and other types of presenting your findings, just to get an idea, so that sometimes you have to be innovative, right? In making your presentation in such a way that readers enjoy what they are reading. For this presentation, we're going to only focus on theme-driven format. If you want to get more information about a case-driven format, my book will be very helpful for you. And I will show you the book I'm talking about later. For the theme-driven format, what you do is that you state your research question and you state the theme that's addressing the research question, and you present the meaning of the theme. What does this theme mean? You are helping your audience to understand the theme. You are defining the theme. You are presenting the parameters of the theme, and then provide evidence. And after providing evidence, you conclude. Conclusion could be how the theme is addressing the research question, or conclusion can be an explanation of the evidence, and then you can connect it to the theme that you have. So these are the 4 things that you have to consider when you are presenting your themes. You're going to do this for each of the themes. So if you have 5 themes, you finish with the first theme, you go to the second theme, and you do the same thing. So let me show you. So when you are writing your findings, and you are presenting it based on the theme. First, you state the theme. What is the theme? And the second stage that you have to think about is, what is the meaning of the theme? What is the definition of the theme? The theme is most of the time an abstract information. You have to bring life to the theme by defining it. You have to make sure that you are describing the parameters, the delimitations of the theme, the characteristics of the themes. What does the theme represent? What kind of codes that came under the theme? What are the characteristics? What are the code count? The code count is the number of significant information connected to the themes. What are the case count? What are the number of participants connected to the themes? How unique is this theme? What are the components of the theme? What are the properties of the theme? Is the theme independently addressing the research question, or is the theme related to another theme? How dominant is the theme? How dominant the theme is based on the code count and also the case count. If the case count is high and the code count has also the highest number, then the code is dominant. So some of them, you can talk about how many participants were connected to the team. You can talk about how many significant information were connected to the team. Not all of them that you're going to refer to numbers, right? When it comes to qualitative findings, you focus less on numbers and more on words, but you can sometimes use numbers to support or to explain the theme. These are the things that you have to think about. You don't have to write about all these things, or you don't have to answer all these questions, but answering 2 or 3 questions and addressing your research question will be great. And to be innovating and making your presentation not boring. For your first theme, you can use the first and second question. For the second theme, you can focus on using the third and the fourth question. There should be a variation of the way that you're explaining the theme so that you give life to the presentation, right? You make it easy for people to digest, at the same time make your presentation of the theme so interesting. So you don't have to answer everything here when you are writing about the themes, right? So the strategy here is that when you have your themes, you can just answer these questions, and based on that, you'll be able to write about it. Then in terms of evidence, you can quote participants to support, or you quote the document that you analyze, take some excerpt and use that to support your theme. When you are quoting them, you have to make sure that you introduce the quote. The same way that I showed you in the article, where the author's introducing the quote before they present the quote. You don't want to just put the quote there and then walk away, leaving your audience to figure out what you quoted, right? You want to bring a context. You want to provide a nice environment before you present the evidence. And then when you finish presenting the evidence, you can explain, helping your readers to understand the quote. If you want to introduce another quote, try and see if you can demonstrate the connection between the first evidence and the second evidence. You cannot just say participant A said this one and participant B said this, participant C said that. Try to show the connection so that there's a logical flow from one evidence to another evidence. It's very important for you to do that. The next one is you can also use visual representation as a way of supporting the themes. If you use in vivo, you can use project map, word cloud, word tree, case and code comparison, outcome, tables, and chart. You can use some of them to support your findings. Remember, all these visual representation, they are playing an auxiliary role. They are playing a supporting role. This means that visual representation are not the main findings. The findings are the themes, right? So they are providing support. They are adding value to the information that you are presenting. So if any of the visual representation here is not adding value, you don't have to present the table. You don't have to present a chart if it's not adding value to the information. If it's not adding more explanation, if it's not helping your readers to better understand the findings, you don't have to present the chart or table. So you always have to think about, you have to be very deliberate in terms of presenting a visual representation. So one of the visual representations that you can present is a word tree. So this one shows the word participants use and how they use it. This one shows the words they use before and after. It gives you the context, how they use that word. So when you are presenting your findings and maybe one of the themes is related to work, you can present this visual representation to add more information about how participants use the word work. You can also use a word cloud, right? This one shows the kinds of words participants use and how many times. So if they use it frequently, the font will be bigger, right? The bigger the words, the more frequent the participant use. If you see here care, and maybe one of your themes is talking about caring, they have to take care of themselves, you could use this one as a way of supporting what participant was saying. You can also show it, especially if you are comparing two participants, right? So you can see here that I'm comparing P1 and P3. We call it case comparison diagram. This one shows what they have in common and what they don't have in common. If this one is making sense to you and it's not going to confuse your audience and is adding value to the information that you are presenting, yes, you can present the information. Another visual representation is the project map. This one is so interesting because if you are presenting a theme, right, and you want to show who is connected to the theme, you can show this, as you can see here, P2 and P1 are connected, and these are the demographics. If you want to bring information about who are connected to the teams and what are the demographics, this diagram will be very helpful for you to show. The last table that is so useful is the summary table. This one, after you presented all your themes addressing a research question, you can generate or create a summary table. So as you can see here, you have your themes here in the first column. The second column is the description, what the theme represents, a brief information about the theme. You are just defining the theme briefly. Then you also present the case count, the number of participants that are connected to the theme. So you can see here that 5 participants are connected to this theme. And also the code count is the significant information. We call it empirical indicators, right? The number of accepts that are connected to this theme. You can see here that 11 significant information are connected to this theme. And also you quote one participant in support. This summary table is important. It's not required, but it adds value to what you are presenting, especially if you want readers to get a quick review of the codes and the meaning and the number of significant information and number of participants that are connected to the team, and also a quote from participant. This one will be very helpful. So now you are done with your presentation. The last step is to write your summary. This one is easy. Why is it easy? So what you're going to do, as you can see here, you are just taking little information from all the sections and writing about it. So you're going to write a paragraph, but it will be a sentence for each of the components. One sentence for overview, 1 or 2 sentences for the demographics, another 1 or 2 for data analysis process, 2 or 3 sentences for findings, and then last one is 1 sentence for concluding statement. Then you are done with the presentation of your findings. So you see how if you follow this, it's going to be so easy for you to present your findings. And if you want more information, my book, A Step-by-Step Guide to Qualitative Data Coding, will be very helpful for you. I provide examples. When you go to chapter 13, it provides you with an example of how you present your findings. I'll also put the link of this PowerPoint in the description section so that you can get access to it, and then you can click on the link if you want to. So the second book is also very helpful, especially those who are working on phenomenological study. This one will give you all the information that you have to know about phenomenology, and also how to analyze your data and incorporate your conceptual theoretical framework into the analysis. The last one is the dissertation research method. This one is so useful. We provide you with a lot of information about how to write your dissertation from the beginning to the end. So these are my contact information. If you want more consultation, you can contact me, and these are my information, my email address. You can follow my YouTube channel if you want similar videos like what I'm providing to you right now. You can support my channel by following and liking my videos and sharing them. I have another YouTube that focuses on providing you daily tips about qualitative research. So you can also subscribe to that channel. So this is what I have for you. If you have any question, put it in the comment section and I'll be happy to address them for you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.